Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this show is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and it's coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock, New York, on Channel 23, public access television, and also from YouTube. And this evening, we are having a program focusing on transitions. And we are at a time in which there are many transitions in life. And in the last couple of days, I have learned that a person who has been famous in the Woodstock area for many years has recently transitioned over and passed away. And by that I mean Grandfather Woodstock. And if you're new to this area, you may not know Grandfather Woodstock. But the chances are pretty good that you do, because people through the years have come from all the corners of the earth to see him and to get a picture from him and to enjoy his smile. And he was a master at what he did. And I wrote about Grandpa Woodstock in the first book that I wrote about hunger, called I Don't Hang Out in Churches Anymore. And I am going to read to you from this chapter, a very short chapter about Grandpa Woodstock. Grandpa Woodstock is coming. Grandpa Woodstock is coming, announced his very own town herald as Grandfather Woodstock, Lady Estar, and Hector, their fluffy little white dog, made their way to the pantry for their regular Wednesday afternoon grocery shopping. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, Grandpa Woodstock and Lady Estar arrived. He parked his famous colorful cart at the pantry entrance under the shade of a tree so Hector wouldn't get overheated. And while Hector waited patiently outside in the cart, Grandpa Woodstock and Lady Estar came in, signed the register, and shopped. In Woodstock, Grandpa Woodstock was the most colorful of the colorful and the most charming of the charming, with his props and his smile. Residents loved him, and travelers from all over the globe adored him. Women especially responded to him. How could anyone resist? When in the hallway, Grandfather Woodstock entertained both shoppers and volunteers. "My, how beautiful you look today," he gushed with enthusiasm as he sounded the horn attached to his walking stick. Toot toot. And I was no exception to the rule. When I heard those words, my heart melted, because in reality, working in the pantry was tough with the overcrowded hallway, overstuffed food shelves, and overtired shoppers. For the few minutes that Grandpa Woodstock and Lady Estar shopped in the pantry, none of it mattered. He made us each feel special when he showed off his clothes, his cart, his horn, his peace sign, and when he posed for photographs. A few years ago, Grandpa Woodstock and Lady Estar fell in love, and what a pair. They looked alike. They were about the same size and build, and my eyes told me that they were a pair of matching size 8s. Their long, flowing silver hairstyles and their lovely matching beards only emphasized their striking appearance as they stood in the pantry selecting vegetables for the evening meal that they planned to serve to their closest homeless friends. Toot toot. He and Lady Estar dressed beautifully in flowing silk skirts and kimonos. They favored red floral print jackets and dresses. Their toenails were always painted, and they wore matching Teva sandals. As they chatted, I felt they were already dressed for their evening event. He trained us all to gather around and ooh and ah as he chose apples, oranges, carrots. Toot toot. When they left the pantry, Grandpa Woodstock pushed their cart out to the village green so admirers could take pictures, buy postcards, and donate money in Grandpa's tip jar. None of Woodstock's rich and famous got so many requests for autographs and photographs. They couldn't compete with Grandpa Woodstock's show-off tricks. And maybe some of these people should have gotten a horn. Toot toot. He probably never meant a word of it, but no matter. This was street theater at its finest. He drew us in, made us feel special for the moment. Life was beautiful. "My, how lovely you look today," he announced to the crowd as he waved a peace sign high in the air. Grandfather Woodstock convinced us all with his smile and the toot of his horn that our pantry was important, that we were okay, and that we were accepted by the community. It was validation. Personally, in my heart, I was just like everyone else. I wanted us all in the pantry to feel okay and accepted, and I probably needed the validation more than anyone else. And so now, Grandfather Woodstock has passed. This is the end of an era, actually, and we all miss him. He was part of the landscape for several decades, and he came at a time when there were a lot of people in Woodstock who were with him spiritually, emotionally, physically. And he was finally the last one. So this is the end of an era. And I really feel like it's representative of a lot of things in Woodstock that have changed in the last few years. The gentrification of Woodstock has reached a new pinnacle, and the place is totally different. And I remember several years ago thinking that one of the first people to lose that we lost in the community was Jogger John, because Jogger John was right there with Grandpa Woodstock, and he was fabulous. Jogger was homeless for many years here in Woodstock. He finally did have a home at the end. He swept the streets. He kept the streets clean. He kept Woodstock clean. And he not only did that, he was aware of where all the children in town were. So that when Jogger John was here in town and was sweeping the streets, he knew where all the children were. He was really taking care of his community. And I felt that was such a beautiful thing and so very Woodstocky to have that happen. And then, of course, Jogger John was run over by a car, I understand. And Jogger John was psychic, and he was visited. He had many local people were his clients. And I know that when I was in the food pantry, I went to Jogger John several times, and he gave you an answer within 15 or 20 seconds. It was just an amazing thing that he did. So we are now saying goodbye to Jogger John and Grandpa Woodstock. And because I have begun this program on this transition note, I am going to complete this program by talking about end-of-life Reiki, which is something that I teach. There aren't that many people out there that teach it, but I think it's extremely important to have the skill to offer Reiki to a person who is dying. And we all die. It's a noble event, and it's a wonderful thing to do. So the concept of a specific Reiki for hospice and for the end of life is very, very, very important. So I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about several of the things that I teach in this class. And one of the things that I teach is what we call Reiki stress relief. I call it Reiki stress relief. You hold the peace points for a couple of minutes just to relieve mental and emotional stress. It's helpful to do this when there is physical injury and pain. Doing this right here often reduces small stresses and is one of the best ways I know to prevent fatigue, is by touching this stress point. When you do this with bigger problems, it will help you think more clearly and rather than act emotionally. So you take your two hands on either side of the forehead and you hold, your fingers are touching, and you hold very gently the peace points above the forehead, in the middle of the forehead. So you're right there, right over the top of the eyebrows. And you go over the stressful situation. What is bothering you? What is causing you to feel stress? And really give yourself some relief mentally. Don't try to solve the problem. Just accept it. Just realize that this is how you see this moment. And this is a very good thing to practice this evening, because so many of us are under stress. We have been under stress for so long. And if you can just take a couple of minutes and talk to yourself about how I feel stressed because I've been under stress for a long time, and I have been trying to soldier on and use this time to get in touch with your feelings and try to see, if you possibly can, some good in the situation. Sometimes when you do this, you can't see anything good in the situation. So you can be honest about that. And you can do this for yourself. You can do this with your clients. You can do this to put people that you know in a relaxed state. So this is a really wonderful thing to do. And to hold your fingers up here, it's a very relaxing thing to do. And so it's very interesting. When I first moved here many years ago, I hadn't been here long, and I do practice actually 10 different kinds of Reiki. And there's the main Reiki that is practiced in this area is Usui Reiki, which is your garden variety of Reiki. And none of the different Reikis that I practice are better than the others. But so I showed up, and I really felt like I could practice Reiki in Woodstock. So I went to the bank to open an account, and I went to what used to be it was the TD Bank, and then before it was, I think, the Ulster Savings and Loan, whatever it was before that. And the young manager was talking to me about it, and he said, Now, Ms. Greco, what is it that you're going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to practice Reiki. He said, listen, forget it, lady. You'll never make a dime in this town. Hell, he said, hell, lady, I'm a Reiki too, and here I am in this bank. So I switched to canine massage therapy, which is a total hoot, and I have enjoyed it very, very much. But I still practice Reiki, and considering the transitions that I have experienced in Woodstock recently, I am going to be offering end-of-life Reiki classes at very reasonable prices. I'm going to be offering regular Reiki classes at very reasonable prices. I feel this is one contribution that I can make to the community. I know that when Donald Trump was elected the first time, that I did call some people together, and I taught them some Reiki, and it was very, very positive, and I intend to do that again. So one of the things that happens with Reiki, whether you practice Usui Reiki or Violet Flame Reiki or whatever kind of Reiki you practice, Reiki for animals, Reiki, whatever, you need a definition. And everybody who practices Reiki defines it differently. And years ago, I took a class under, and this was at a time in which I was taking any Reiki class I could find. I have not taken that many classes recently because I have not felt comfortable leaving my family for long periods of time. But there was a woman in the city whose name is Pamela Miles, and I'm assuming that she's still out there. I know that she wrote a book. That's okay. I've written a book. A lot of Reiki practitioners have written a book. When I first learned Reiki and when I first started teaching Reiki, there were no books. They just weren't. So now, if you want to find out more about Reiki, you can just go to the library, pick out anything that attracts you, and take it home and read it. I mean, there's hundreds of books out there for Reiki. Thank goodness. But what I'm getting to here is that Pamela Miles defined Reiki, and there was a woman who at the flea market this last summer, Susan Frank, who was practicing Reiki, and she had a definition for Reiki. Everybody has a definition for Reiki, but Pamela Miles says, and I quote, "Reiki is a gentle, balancing spiritual healing practice which is offered through light touch to a fully clothed recipient. Reiki has no known medical contraindications and is generally experienced as deeply relaxing and refreshing." To me, that's a pretty good description of Reiki. It is a light touch, and it is practiced on a clothed body. And that is a hugely important thing, because if you are going to get them, and I'm not criticizing, I am a massage therapist. I got my start in 1980 as a massage therapist. You have to, if you're going to receive massage therapy, you've got to take off your clothes. And that right there means that you're going to have to go into a private space. You're going to have to remove your clothes, and then you're going to have to come out, and you're going to have to get in under the covers. And people who need massage, sometimes it takes them months to get beyond the stress that they feel from removing their clothes to get a massage. And it's just a really, really interesting thing. And taking off your clothes is very interesting even among massage therapists. I took a massage therapy class many years ago, and I have not taken any massage therapy classes since I came to New York State, and I've been here for over 20 years. But I took a massage therapy class, and the teacher of the class, rightfully so, demanded that everyone had to be covered. That being said, our bodies are all different shapes, they're all different sizes, they're all different everything. And that's asking a lot for somebody sometimes. And even among the students, that was distressing to people. So Reiki, right off the bat, for starters, takes care of that issue, because you don't have to remove your clothes. I will say this. Listen, I have received Reiki in a bus station. I have received Reiki in front of hundreds of people. I have received Reiki in a private room. I have received Reiki in all kinds of settings. It doesn't matter. Reiki doesn't care. If you are in a car wreck and you are laying outside of your car on the road, and a Reiki practitioner drives by and stops and comes to your aid and offers you Reiki, it doesn't matter. Reiki is adaptable, and that is extremely important. And so when you have massage, the person has to overcome the nudity issue. With Reiki, you don't have to. You're covered. And when I give Reiki to people, they're fully clothed, and they are quite often undercover. And that's because it takes care of the vulnerability. Quite often when people are ill or injured or whatever, the vulnerability factor is huge. So this is where Reiki comes in beautifully. It balances the body, whether you are on a hospital bed, whether you're in your home, whether you're on the side of the road, whether you're in a bus station, it doesn't matter. If you need Reiki, you can receive it. And so that gets you months ahead from a lot of other modalities. So it's very, very important. Another thing that's very important about Reiki is that there are no contraindications. When I studied massage, the first massage class, there were 40 people in that class. And we were in a large room, and we were seated, in chairs. It was a classroom. And the teacher started talking to us. The first words out of her mouth were the contraindications. And when I start teaching reflexology, or when I teach anything, the first thing I talk about is the contraindications. There are none for Reiki. There is no reason why you cannot give a person a Reiki session. So that's very, very important to learn, that Reiki is available to you at all times. And that's an important thing. For me, that is an important reason for people to take Reiki. That's an important reason for anyone who has children to take Reiki. It is an important reason for anybody who teaches a classroom of children to have Reiki. And because of what it is and how it works, you do not have to always lay your hands on a person in order to offer healing. People don't understand that. That's a whole concept about Reiki that people don't understand, but it is true. You do not have to. I know that I was recently down at the Dyson Cancer Center, and I was receiving a mammogram. And a mammogram is a highly stressful situation. I don't care why you're getting a mammogram. That machine it's cruel. And you have to do it. As women, you have to do it, because otherwise you expose yourself to a disease and you don't even know you have it. So the woman at the machine she said, okay, now put your hand up here, put it on the arm like that. And all of a sudden I realized this woman, her hands were very warm. And without anything else, I just said to her, I said, do you practice Reiki? And she said, well, yes. How did you know? And I said, I can feel it. So when you practice Reiki, you do not have cold hands. And it is so important. Because when people are ill, they get poked, they get prodded, they get pinched, they get stuck, they get all kinds of things. And a lot of times they get handled by a set of cold hands. There is nothing like the cold hands of a phlebotomist. And all they are is right there, but their hands are cold. And that factor is removed when you do Reiki, when you practice Reiki. It's amazing. If I had a school, and I have for years had a reflexology school and a Reiki school. If I had a school in which phlebotomy students were attending, I would really try to get all of them to offer to learn Reiki, because then you don't have cold hands for your clients, which is very important. So I kind of got off on a tangent there, but I'm going to start off with a prayer for the end of life. Dear Archangel Azrael, all guardian angels, all beings of protection, and all other angels, archangels, all ascended masters, energetic beings, the essence of the healing Buddha, and the master spirits of Reiki, I ask that the passing of this person be as smooth and positive as possible for the ultimate good of the universe. To me, that's just such a beautiful paragraph. I thank all angels, archangels, seraphim, and energy beings who assisted her or him at the time on earth. And I thank those who are now assisting this person in his or her transition. I ask that this passing event be used for the good of all of those involved. And I ask that those left behind feel comfort now. Please help them heal. Offer guidance to those who are suffering and help them realize the blessings this situation holds. Please infuse this connection with energy so that we may all clearly communicate with him or her, and please watch over everyone concerned. That's so lovely. If there is any situation with anyone related to the grief that needs assistance, please send help now. Thank you, and amen. I just feel that prayer is so comforting. And there is a Reiki light invocation, which I picked up somewhere along the way. I invoke the healing light of the creative source within. I am a clear and perfect channel. I am light. I am love. May this Reiki healing be for whomever, for that person's highest good and healing. Amen. That is such a beautiful collection of words that that work at a time when a person is receiving a Reiki session for whatever reason. And you can receive a Reiki session for whatever reason. You can receive a Reiki session without having to say, I have pain or I have discomfort. You can just say, look, I need a Reiki session, I'll take it. You don't have to. Reiki is very useful for the end of care. And the two main reasons to use Reiki at the end of care is for the patient, the family, and the caregivers. And for the Reiki practitioner, the staff, the volunteers, and the caregivers. Reiki recipients, the pastors, the patient, the family, the caregivers, Reiki builds rapport. It helps the staff and the volunteers build a relationship with the patient through healing and comforting touch. And that's very important. Eventually, if not much sooner, one of the things that is so important about Reiki is that as your family members and as we age, there may come a time, and it's real common to come a time when the person is not verbal anymore. And you're not speaking to that person anymore. And that's when Reiki takes over. So if you have a relative that you are visiting in a nursing home or a hospital or at his or her home, and that person is no longer verbal, one of the best things you can do for you and for that person is learn Reiki. Reiki's easy to learn, it's easy to practice, it's easy to use, and it is a way of communicating with a person that is nonverbal. So this is very, very important. So it builds this rapport between the caregivers and the family and the patient. And it restores well-being. Reiki helps and it relieves many problems that a person may be experiencing. When the person is at the end of life, it's difficult for the family, it's difficult for the person, it's difficult for the people who are working around this person to take care of the person and to take care of the family members. Because when a person is at the point of death, you've got not only often, sometimes a person is alone, but a lot of times you have not only the person, but you have the siblings, you have the children, you have the grandchildren, you have all of these other people around you, and they are upset. So, and they are worried, and they have spiritual issues. And even though the spiritual issues may be unconscious, they've got problems. And many times people are experiencing grief. And grief has a way of just stepping right in. Grief does not come up to you and say, oh, by the way, here I am. Is this convenient for you now? Grief just shows up when it's time and says, well, here I am. And it's hard to feel like you're in charge. And when you are practicing Reiki, when you use Reiki, when you know Reiki, then life is easier for the moment. And It's even it even helps a person to die calmly. And I think that's very important. I think it's very important for a person to die calmly. Reiki is also what we call gentle care. It is a modality which helps you feel safe and it helps you feel cared for. You know, when a Reiki practitioner is touching you, you feel cared for. And I think that's very, very important. Reiki is also nonverbal. And we talked about that a few minutes ago. When the time comes where the person is not talking, you know, a lot of times, not a lot of times, that's not a good term. Sometimes a person becomes nonverbal months or years before the end of life. Being nonverbal is an end-of-life activity. And that's when Reiki really fits in to the schedule. And you know, Reiki doesn't have a lot of equipment. Reiki doesn't use a lot of machinery. Reiki is very easy to use. And you can offer Reiki to a person who is feeling pain, who is agitated, who is tired. You can offer Reiki to somebody who is non-responsive, and to a person just simply does not want to talk. You know, a lot of times people feel like they must talk. But there are times when talking is not helpful and it's not productive. And Reiki is there for that time, which is really nice. And also, Reiki calms the family. You know, sometimes you offer Reiki to a patient, but then you can offer Reiki to a patient's mother, a brother, a sister, a child, to the pet. You can offer Reiki to all kinds of things. And I think that's very, very important. And also, you know, if the person that you are visiting, if the person who is in your home, Reiki is very important because there are caregivers around a person who is transitioning. Not always. I mean, every situation is individual. But when there are caregivers, Reiki is so appreciated. Reiki is so appreciated. And it's grounding, it's connecting, it's positive, it's present, it's clear, it's uplifting, and it's effective. So Reiki does a lot, and it doesn't demand a lot in return. And you don't have to have a lot of music. You don't have to have a room where they go to. You can just extend a hand. Or you don't even have to extend a hand. You can just extend a little hand. So Reiki can save the day. And it's also, if you practice Reiki, or if you do not practice Reiki, it is a wonderful thing to give as a gift. You can give Reiki as a gift to a caregiver. They like to learn Reiki, and it will change the way they work. It's really a positive thing. It helps the caregiver. You know, when you are at the end of life, people need caregivers 24 hours a day. So self-Reiki, if a person has learned Reiki, self-Reiki is a spiritual path. It's a self-wellness discipline, and it helps in the advancement of the person. Reiki involves simple touch, nonverbal communication, and a healing energy that goes from the practitioner to the patient. It is simple, it's direct, and it helps ease the suffering of those who are dying. It is easy to learn, and it's easy to give. It is an essential part of comfort care. It brings comfort, it brings kindness, and it brings peace. And those are three very powerful words. You know, because when something brings comfort, comfort not only works physically, but you have emotional comfort. You have mental comfort. You have emotional comfort. You know, that's a big thing. I mean, the fact that you can put your hand out and offer comfort to somebody is huge. And also working with an end-of-life situation, it can be very, very tiring. And Reiki rejuvenates. When somebody is exhausted and they don't want to leave the bed, you know, here is mother, here is father, and I've been here for 25 hours or something, but I'm not going to go. You can offer Reiki to that person, and you can shift things so that they're very positive. And you know, the thing about Reiki, when you go to a Reiki place, when you go to somebody's house, when you go to an office and receive Reiki, however you receive Reiki, the person works on you for a half an hour or an hour, and it's wonderful. And you leave the table a new person. You leave the table a changed person, because that's what Reiki does. But you don't have to do that the whole time. When you offer somebody Reiki, you don't have to do this for an hour. You can offer a person Reiki for 2 or 3 minutes, or even a minute. You don't have to offer a lot of Reiki, especially not for the end of life situation. I know that when I first got involved, I mean, I took the class, but I really wasn't all that involved. And when I first got involved with end-of-life Reiki, I realized very quickly that 10 minutes is a lot of time. And you know, this is very true with canine massage therapy. People say, "Oh, I don't have time to give an hour massage to Fido." Well, Fido doesn't want an hour massage. Fido's happy with a minute and a half or 2 minutes. And when you're in a hospice situation when you are in an end-of-life situation, 5 minutes of Reiki is a long time. So Reiki has a way of doing what it needs to do in a very short time. You don't need it. Don't think of anything more than 5 or 10 minutes, really. I know the first time I heard that, I thought, well, what is this? And that's what I have learned. That's what I have learned. One of the things that you learn in end-of-life Reiki is how to give a Reiki session to somebody in a wheelchair. So that is one of the things. If you take a class with me, there will be a wheelchair there. And I can remember, I know the first time I took an end-of-life Reiki class, it was like, wait a minute, what is this? What is this? But that's how it is, because at the end of life, you greet the people where they are. And if the person is in a wheelchair, that's where you give them Reiki. So there is, in a Reiki, an end-of-life Reiki class, there is this process of learning to use the wheelchair. And truthfully, I have received and given Reiki to people in wheelchairs, Reiki to people in gurneys. I have received and given Reiki to people who are walking beside me, to people who are in cars. You know, that's the beauty of Reiki. That is the beauty of Reiki. You can do it anytime, anywhere, and it doesn't bother you. Now, one of the things that you need to do when you get ready to be working with an end-of-life person is to kind of, talk to them for a few minutes before you do this. Even though you may feel like the person is non-responsive, but you want to have a feeling that they have given you permission. And if they haven't given you permission, if they are non-responsive and they have not given you permission, that is okay. That is okay. But realize you're only going to be you're only going to be doing Reiki for a very few minutes, really, because if you do too much, it can be too much. So healing comes in many forms. It can be an antibiotic. It can be chemotherapy. It can be a cast. Healing is something that your soul experiences. And healing is something that your soul accepts as the recipient of Reiki finds peace and serenity and calm on the way to a transition. And sometimes, along with healing, you have a smile, you have a gentle touch, you listen, and healing becomes an expression of caring. And support, as you support a person who is getting ready to die. So when you offer Reiki to somebody, what are they feeling? I know the first time that I've offered Reiki, I have given so many classes. The first time that a person receives Reiki, sometimes they don't feel anything. I have never, I'm going to say that I believe that when you offer Reiki to a person who is at the end of life, that they do feel things. They really do. Even though they may never have experienced Reiki, I think they do feel things. For example, they may feel cold, but once you start giving them Reiki, they're going to feel warm. And they may feel heat. They may feel heat from your hands, because that's what happens in Reiki. Your hands warm up. And they may fall asleep. They may be sort of halfway asleep, halfway awake, nodding off. That's fine. And they may relax. They may tear up. Do not be bothered by that, because a lot of times people do tear up. Listen, people tear up any time you start to touch them, and it is because they feel cared for and they feel comfort. And I know that back in 1980, when I was learning massage, if you started to give somebody a massage and they began to tear up, everything came to a screeching halt. And out came the Kleenex, and we all, got around them and hugged them and whatever. It's gone through several different variations on the theme. You do whatever makes you feel that you are supporting the person. So you may, for all practical purposes, ignore it. But you're touching them, you're caring for them, you're offering them support. So that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes muscles may jerk, and that's okay too. That's really part and parcel of any kind of a healing session. Also, people may cough. They're doing different things as they release spiritual experiences. So that is something that definitely happens to them. And I think we are coming to the end here. There are some things that you do need to recognize when you go to visit a person who is at an end of life. Wash your hands. You want to be careful. Oh, wow, we are down to 5 minutes. Woo! You want to be careful. Wash your hands. you don't want to give that person anything. And there is a susceptibility to diseases. And if you are afraid that you might give that person something, try not to touch them. But wash your hands, wear a mask, do what you don't want to be the person that gives a dying person a cold or pneumonia. We have not even begun to discuss this class. It's been a very interesting time. I hope that if anyone would like to learn about Reiki for the end of life, that I know that I will be offering this class, and I hope that you will join me. The cost will not be, my classes are always extremely reasonable. And I thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I thank you for joining me when I read the story about Grandfather Woodstock, who was an extremely controversial person in Woodstock, but well received from people all around the world. And thank you so much, and I look forward to having you again on this show. Come and visit us on your television or on your computer. And Miss Ellen, thank you so much for all you do. I swear, if it were not for Ellen, this would not happen. So we are extremely grateful.